Well, good afternoon. I want to welcome you to another episode of the Fireplace Show. We're coming at you here live, and today I got a special guest, and I'll tell you about him in just a minute. But what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be talking about one of those things that drives so many consumers crazy, and that is a smoking fireplace. And we're going to talk about the different issues that cause your fireplaces to smoke back. This could be when you start it. It could be later on in the evening or whatever. So my guest today is a gentleman that I've known for quite a few years. His name is Jim Ray, and he's joining me from Amarillo, Texas. And Jim is a BPI, that stands for Building Performance Institute, certified blower door technician, where he goes in and checks pressures in the house and those type of things to isolate down why fireplaces and wood stoves don't work right. So Jim, you ready to rock and roll today with me and share some of that great knowledge you got?
Yes, sir. Let's get it on.
There you go. Let's get it going on. Well, one of the things is, Jim, a lot of times people have problems starting up their fireplace. Whenever they're starting it up, they start a fire and it blows back in their face. In other words, the chimney's just not drawing right. So what's some of the tricks of the trade that you would suggest to somebody when they have a cold chimney to get it to draft starting when they start out with a fresh fire? Now, keep in mind, everybody doesn't have a gas log lighter like you commonly got in Amarillo. So if you don't have that log lighter to warm it up, what do?
I would suggest getting a big wad of newspaper, wad it up and stick it on your grate before you put the wood on, and just set it toward the back and light that. It's kind of like priming the pump on a water. You want to kind of prime that up a little bit and get that warmed up, because what happens is cold air is a lot heavier than warm air. And so as your fire is starting on the first startup, it takes a little bit of time for that warm air to take all the cold air and push it out of there. And while that's happening, then you get a lot of spillage out the front. So if you will take your chimney, like I said, newspaper, light it, heat it up, and then that will have a good start on getting a draw started for your fire.
Yeah. And also some of the things, Jim, that we've suggested over years, I need to know if you agree with this, is you may need to open a door or a window and allow some outside air into the room to help it get started. Would you agree with that suggestion?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because a lot of times that's what you've got to do. You got to reverse that flow. And that's going to involve heating up the chimney. Now, you've also got to do something called open the damper. And that damper is that little door up in the top of your fireplace. Some people call it the flue. If you're from the South, Jim, they actually call it the flute down here and other things. But you've got to open that door. And would you agree with that assessment and that recommendation?
I have yet to see a chimney and fireplace draw correctly that had the damper closed. It might be possible, but I've never seen it happen.
I just don't think it's possible, because it's just like, let's put it this way. Can you fit through your front door if you don't open the door, Jim?
No.
Okay, so it's the same situation. This is the escape hatch for the air to go up the chimney. So Randy just joined us. Look here what she's saying. It's 7 degrees in Kansas City today. So we have a lot of talks on the phone today about preheating the flue. And that's what's happening. So in Amarillo right now, I think it's pretty cold down there, isn't it?
I think we're at 32. I think by Thursday they're saying a high of 9 and low of -6. So
right. Which is,
we'll be a little bit behind you, but probably it's going to be darn cold.
That's pretty cold for West Texas, isn't it?
Very cold.
Okay. So anyway, very similar weather to here in the wintertime. You actually got 4 seasons out there. You're also an area that's very dry. You don't have a lot of rain in Amarillo, do you?
Unfortunately, we don't. And we haven't seen moisture in probably 3 or 4 months. So we're in a major drought here right now. But even in a given year, we might have a total of 20 inches for the whole year, including rain and snow. So
okay.
we're dry here.
Okay, so we've covered one problem with chimneys that smoke back when you start up the fireplace. Another one is, Jim, is the height of the chimney. Many times chimneys are simply not tall enough to properly draw. Would you agree with that assessment from your expertise as a chimney sweep and also as a blower door technician?
Absolutely, because your chimneys need to have a minimum height requirement. And then also, a lot of times, if you have other structures around, for as maybe the hip of your roof, or maybe if you have a large tree, or if you're in a townhouse situation where the homes are butted up next to each other and have a taller roof next to you. So all these factors could disrupt the airflow around the chimney. And if you have disrupting of air around it, then it's going to cause a pressure difference, and it might have a problem where you're going to have a reverse effect on your chimney and actually having the air going backwards, and which is going to cause the smoke come back into the house.
Okay, so we've covered a couple issues here. Let's cover another issue, which is the flue size. The interior of the flue has got to be big enough to exhaust the air that's pulled in through the fireplace. And then we got to have construction of the chimney itself for maximum laminar airflow. And laminar airflow is where we're forcing the smoke and the gases from that big fireplace opening down to that much smaller flue. So, Jim, what percentage of the fireplace opening should the flue size be according to codes and standards?
Roughly speaking, the opening of the fireplace, whatever square inches that you have, then your flue needs to be, if it's a square rectangle, needs to be a tenth of that. So if you were to have a very large opening in your fireplace and have itty bitty flue going down, it's going to have a hard time to get that laminar flow going. It's kind of like the muffler on your car or the exhaust on your car. If you have all the exhaust coming out, and if you have just a little bit of exhaust tailpipe, it's having a hard time to get that exhaust out. You're going to get the exhaust out, then the engine's not going to be at peak performance. It's going to have a lot of coughing and sputtering. It's not going to run very good. It's going to run very rough. Same way with your chimney.
Gotcha. Now, again, we're trying to cover all the areas that could be affecting your fireplace if you're a consumer. Now, Jim, one of the processes we teach is the fireplace depth. Sometimes the fireplace is too deep when we look at the studies of Count Rumford from the 18th century. So do you find a lot of fireplaces that may just be too deep could be the reason why they're having this performance issue of smoke coming and smoke getting in my eyes?
Very well could be. We don't have a whole lot of those here in Amarillo where they're too deep. It's usually the other way. They're too shallow and they get a lot of spillage coming in. But very seldom do we have any fireplaces here that are too deep, but definitely could be a cause of smoke spillage.
Okay, so you said a word I want you to identify, which is the word spillage. So the people that are listening to this that are not experts in fireplaces, what do we mean when we say the word spillage?
It's kind of like if you have water in a glass and you spill it out, you have water coming over the top, over the edge. Same way with your fireplace, where you don't have so much. It could be rolling smoke coming out of the top of it, or it could be little puffs coming out. But the spillage is where it's spilling out of the firebox into the room instead of going up the flue where it's supposed to.
Right. So if you look at the picture that I've got on my background today, this is a picture showing significant spillage because we can see staining above the fireplace opening. But one of the processes that we teach in our classes when we teach technicians is to look for something that we refer to as marginal draft, which means it's not as pronounced as what you're seeing behind me. But again, we are having spillage into the home of the smoke and gases. So do you see this as an issue, Jim?
That's probably the biggest issue that we have here. I call it just kind of like puffing. It kind of like a poof, and a little smoke comes out, and it burns along, and then poof, a little more smoke, where you really don't see it rolling out, but it burns for an hour, and all of a sudden you look up, and there's kind of a gray haze, smoky haze in the room. And so that's just kind of we call puffing out, and then not just a rolling out constantly. That's probably what we have more here is just the little puffing going on.
Okay. So we've talked about a couple of issues, and this is what, as a chimney sweep, when your company goes out and does a chimney service, is your technicians checking for this problem when they go out that we have marginal draft or performance issues, Jim?
Yes, that's one of the first things that they look at. But even before then, they will have a discussion with the homeowner and ask them, are you having any problems with your fireplace? Is it doing everything that you want it to do? Is it providing the heat that you want it to do? Are you having any kind of smoking issues? If you are having smoking issues, is it on the startup? Is it during the middle of it? Is it during the cool down, or is it during the whole time? So we find out from the homeowner if they're having any problems, and that way we can address our inspection even more so. We can hone in to those certain concerns that the homeowner has.
Okay, so Jim, I want to go to a subject matter that a lot of people may not be aware of, but it could be the cause of their smoking fireplaces, and that's a phenomenon we call negative pressure, where the pressure inside the home is too low, so the smoke is coming backwards. What would you share about the phenomenon of negative pressure and how it affects today's homes?
Probably 80–90% of the time, a smoking problem is going to be pressure. You can think of smoke or air as being having fluid characteristics like water, and it's always flowing. And so air is going to flow from a positive pressure to a negative pressure. So if you have a fireplace that's working correctly, then you're going to have positive pressure at the bottom or in the home, negative pressure at the top. And so it's going to move from the positive to the negative. Conversely, if you have positive at the top, negative at the bottom, it's going to come backwards back into the home. And there's several reasons for this. We mentioned earlier, if you have the top, if you don't have the chimney height correct, you have obstructions, and you have air disturbances up here, then that could disturbance cause a positive pressure. Even though everything's fine in the home, it could be causing positive air coming back inside. By the same token, if you're going to have air going out, you've got to have air coming in to relieve that pressure. So if there's no air coming in, there's no way smoke is going to go out. Again, going from positive to negative. And by the opposite, if you have air going someplace out of the house and then it's leaving, you got to have air coming in. And so a lot of times, if that makeup air that's coming in to replace the lost air is going to be stolen from the chimney, and so it's going to literally be sucking the air back in. Again, positive to negative creates a suction, and so now you have a reverse flow in that. So like I said, majority of the time, if there is a smoking problem, it's going to be pressure related somewhere.
Okay, good. So these pressure issues, people are talking to us know that me and you, neither one are spring chickens, right? And so,
Absolutely.
right. So as we've went through life, many years ago, when you and I grew up, our houses had a lot of leakage into them where air flowed into the house. And through construction standards today, through the way we're super insulating our homes, we have cut off that available air. And then we also have the problem of leaks out of the house on the upper level. And we also have mechanical systems such as clothes dryers, kitchen exhaust hoods. What's some of the other things that you can think of that could be sucking the combustion air out of the house and causing performance issues, Jim?
Well, a lot of it's just poor construction. One of the biggest issues that I see are can lights in the ceiling because they're not sealed off. And so you're leaking air up through the ceiling into the attic and into the air. And probably the biggest one, a lot of people think that the biggest air loss is going to be windows and doors, but actually it's where the joints between the walls and the ceilings, those are not sealed off. And so you get air leakage through those. Also electrical outlets where you plug it in. You've got that plate and you got a hole and then you got a void in the wall, which may or may not be spray foam. And then you're losing air in there. So virtually any place that's got any kind of crack, crevice, opening, you're going to be losing air.
Right. So what we're going to do, I've got a couple videos I'm going to play. I'm going to play the first one now. And this is a video that I actually narrated for a YouTube channel by the name of Ask the Chimney Sweep. And Clay Lamb has allowed other people, and it's a really good resource on YouTube, Ask the Chimney Sweep. So this is a video on negative pressure. And I did this, Jim, probably 10 to 11 years ago. So we're going to play this right now. And after we get done with this, me and you'll discuss this a little deeper, okay?
Hello, welcome to Ask the Chimney Sweep. One of the questions we often get asked at Ask the Chimney Sweep is, people want to know about putting a glass door on the front of their fireplace. The reason they're wanting to do this, when they're around the fireplace and the fireplace isn't in use, they're constantly feeling cold air coming down the fireplace and around. And where we're sitting at right now, as you can see, we've got a nice warm fire going. But if we didn't have the fire going, we're sitting around here and we've got cold air coming in the hall. Commonly, the same people that are having this issue will also sometimes have odor issues in the room that smell like wet ashes, wet wood, these type of things that are coming in the wintertime, summertime, but basically when the fireplace is not in use. We'll identify what this is. This chimney is made for air to go up. But in today's construction, many homes go through a flow reversal, or what we call a negative pressure issue, where when the fireplace is not in use, it's actually pulling air down the chimney into the room. A lot of consumers want to put a glass door onto it. Now, the glass door may stop some of that influx of air. It's not going to stop it all. In fact, glass doors aren't airtight. We can leak air through here, through the gaps, different places within the system. Actually, the air can be pulled down so strong through a glass door, the wind will actually whistle and the doors rattle tight. The very real problem here is what we call negative pressure. Negative pressure is because the house that's built today is basically an airtight house. We have a house that we have kitchen vents, bathroom exhaust, whole house vacuums, generator ranges, and a number of devices that take the air out of the house. This air is not replaced. So in the average home today that's built, the only place for this air to be added is to come down the chimney. Many people say, I've closed my damper, but what you've got to be aware of, the throat damper that's located right inside the fireplace here with the handle is really not an airtight assembly. You can leak air around it because it's a metal-to-metal seal. So if we have air coming down, what we may want to do is put another damper on the system that is an airtight damper. We have various kinds on the marketplace that usually mount on top of the chimney, actually have a gasket that fits, you'll open and close from in the fireplace. The key thing is negative pressure issues need to be corrected. It can be very harmful to your health, your children, it's hard on respiratory issues. Again, we appreciate you asking the question here to Ask the Chimney Sweep today. If we can help you out with further questions, please feel free to let us know. We may make a movie and answer your questions in person. Thank you for seeing us today.
So, Jim, as you watch that, what did you think?
Absolutely. Well, as I mentioned earlier, air is coming and going from so many places, and you were talking about all of the places that are being robbed. And one thing that I didn't mention that I thought of and reminded me watching the video is on having these mechanical attic fans on top of the chimneys. On top of the roofs. We've had a lot of problems around here. Get the roofs done, and they put in mechanical vents, but then they don't put the return air vents underneath the soffits. And so it's sucking all the air out of the attic, but there's not any air coming in. So what happens? It's being stolen from the roof. And from the house. If it's coming up from inside the house, and where's that making that air coming from? Probably coming from your chimney.
Okay, so Bart Peters is asking a question. How much effect is a radon system, Jim?
I can honestly tell you, I have no idea.
Okay.
We don't have any we have no radon problems here in West Texas.
Okay, so that would be one, but if it is exhausting air out, it could be a problem there, and it could cause negative pressure. So, Jim, a couple of years ago, you and I were talking, and I advised you to get into blower door testing, and probably you really didn't realize how deep an issue this was when I first recommended that. Would that be true or false?
Absolutely true. I had no idea how much. I knew that pressure affected a lot of the draw in the winds and everything, but I had no idea how much actually affect performances of not only fireplaces, but also the clean air that are in homes. So a lot of people are talking about, well, I've got a problem with my fireplace and it's not working correctly. And as it mentioned, I get smoke smell and wood smell. And in the summertime, I walk by and my fireplace sounds like an old ashtray. And so if all that smell is in the home, then it's going to be bad air that we as consumers are smelling. So it's not only chimney and fireplace performance, but it's also the clean air and the environmental air that we and our families are breathing on a day-to-day basis.
Was this a shock to you, Jim, as you found out the health risk of many of our homes that are in because of bad air quality due to poor ventilation or just sucking combustion products back into the home? Did this really shock you when you found out about this?
It really did. I never even thought about it. If you sit there having a fire and maybe burning a little pine to go with the oak or whatever and go, oh, it's such a nice smell, like having a campfire in the mountains, not even dreaming that we're smelling and ingesting all those carcinogens that are in the smoke. And it's not, a good thing. It's not the cleaner that we strive for. It's great for aesthetics, but not very healthy.
Okay, and one of the things I learned from you, Jim, when you came through the BPI testing and you went through your certification, you and I were having a conversation and you asked me a question I had never thought about before. And that is, Jim, tell me why we have revolving doors on skyscrapers in New York City.
Well, you've got, say, a 30-story building that's got literally thousands of cubic feet of air that's trapped inside of that building. And as I mentioned earlier, if you have air going out, you've got to have air coming in. And by the same token, if you're going to have air coming in, you have to have air coming out. So what they found when they built these and had it all sealed up, they couldn't open the door. So you think about it, you push to go in, and with all that air in there, when they tried to push it, the door would not open because there's no other place in the building for it to escape. And so they came up with a revolving door. You push on one side, air goes in, the other side comes out, and you have the same amount of air going in, coming out. And so it swings freely, solve the problem of opening doors in skyscrapers.
Right. As a simulation of this, many times you may walk into a restaurant that has a door that pulls outward, but because of the kitchen fans are sucking the other way, all of a sudden that door gets hard to open. And that is because it is that the exhaust fan is putting the restaurant under negative pressure. And this is kind of the things that you can look at. And like I said, this is one of the things about your own door. If you've got outside doors and if you close them slightly and the pressure can cause the doors to come open or it can cause them to go closed. Would that be correct, Jim?
Sure. How many times, particularly in the summertime, where you have your doors cracked or open a little bit, and you come inside the house, you open the door, and doors will slam. Again, changing pressure.
Right. What it is, realize this. Wind is pressure. Whenever you're going, whenever you look at turbulence, when airplanes are flying, turbulent air, this is all examples of pressure. So anyway, this is where I really wanted Jim to come on the show today and talk about something called blower door testing, because Jim is one of the few chimney sweeps in the United States that is a certified blower door technician. So Jim, tell them what being a certified blower door technician, what does that say about you and your knowledge of pressure issues?
Well, one would think that I'll be fairly educated and know what I was talking about, but I have a lot of people that would argue with that. But in any event, I have had the training and the testing. And basically what we do in a blower door test is find out how much air leakage a house has. Any given moment, you have air that's going out and you have air that's coming back in. So that air is constantly being exchanged in and out, in and out, in and out. And so current codes and standards require on these energy efficient homes to have only a maximum amount of air changes per hour. So what a blower door test does is measure how many times air comes in, air goes out. So how many times that full house of air is being replaced on an hourly basis. And that's what a blower door test does.
Okay, so what we're going to do, Jim, so people can understand, we're going to show a video of a blower door test being done. And then afterwards, we're going to answer any questions people had, and you and I'll talk further. So let's go with the video here, okay?
Blower doors like this one are among the most useful building diagnostic tools. They're used to track down air leaks, certify houses as part of home performance programs, and their use will soon be required for testing of homes subject to the 2012 IRC. We recently had Larry Armanda, a BPI certified blower door instructor, do a test on this 2,500 square foot wood frame house built in 2001. Let's see how he did it. To prepare for the test, Larry turns off the heating and air conditioning system and any appliance with a flue. This step is important because the blower door's powerful fan could suck exhaust gases with carbon monoxide into the house during the test. Larry leaves his keys on the water heater as a reminder to turn the system back on before he leaves. Next, Larry walks around the house, closing and locking all the windows and exterior doors, including those in the garage. He opens all the interior doors and turns off any ventilation fans, like the range hood and bath fans. He also makes sure the clothes dryer is off. As he walks through the house, he looks for peeling paint, loose ceiling tiles, and anything that could be damaged or blown around during the test. He checks the fireplace for ashes. Now that the house is ready, the next step is to set up the blower door. Larry chooses a centrally located exterior door and unpacks the door components. He starts by assembling the frame and testing the fit inside the door opening. Then he lays the frame onto the fabric cover and secures the Velcro tabs. He reinserts the frame into the door opening. After routing the small green hose to the outside, he puts the fan housing through the elastic hole so the metal grill is on the outside. He confirms the fan controller is in the off position and connects it to the socket on the fan housing. He plugs the other end into a house receptacle. Then he connects the red air hose to the port on the fan housing and input port on the B side of the manometer. Now he connects the green air hose running outside to the reference port on the A side of the manometer. Larry makes sure all the flow rings and cover are in place so he can zero the manometer. Zeroing the gauge, also called establishing baseline, ensures consistent test results regardless of the weather outside. The process for zeroing the manometer is described in the manufacturer's quick guide. Once the baseline is recorded, Larry sets the gauge to measure in pascals and CFM 50. CFM 50 helps operators achieve negative 50 pascals even if the house is so leaky the fan can't depressurize it to that amount. Finally, he has to tell the meter which model of blower door the instrument is connected to. In this case, a Minneapolis blower door Model 3. Now that the door is installed and the manometer is configured, we can begin the blower door test. Larry starts the motor and slowly increases the fan speed until the manometer shows about negative 25 pascals. With the blower door holding steady at negative 25 to negative 30 pascals, he makes sure ash isn't being pulled from the fireplace or any interior finishes are in jeopardy of being damaged. Once he's certain everything is okay, Larry returns to the fan and increases the speed until it reaches negative 50 pascals. If he were unable to reach the minus 50 pascal benchmark, he'd remove a ring or rings and try again. If he still couldn't get to the negative 50 pascals, he'd use the manometer setting that extrapolates the current reading to minus 50. With the CFM measurement recorded, he then walks the house with the fan running to look for obvious leaks. A puffer, sometimes called a smoke pencil, is one common way to look for leaks. Larry also uses an infrared camera to look for air leaks. On this hot day, this ceiling register is almost 100 degrees because the blower door is pulling warm attic air into the leaky attic ductwork. So testing revealed this home could benefit from some air sealing. At 6.2 air changes per hour, it's typical of its vintage, but a little work with a foam gun and some duct sealing would go a long way to improving its energy performance.
Okay, and we're back. So, Jim, did Larry do a pretty good example of what's done during a blower door test?
Did an excellent example. It's pretty well straightforward. We normally have a checklist. We go through and check, make sure that we have everything done in order, go through it, and make sure that we have a very accurate testing on that.
Okay, so let's tell people as you listen, they said the word Pascal. And what you're doing is you're taking the house down to a minus 50 Pascal reading. Am I correct in that?
That is correct.
But listen, to explain, if you have a minus 5 Pascal negative pressure, you can have issues. Would you agree with that? What do you consider an allowable amount of negative pressure, Jim?
Not very much.
Right. So, yeah. So let's give you a comparison. A lot of people say, how much is 5 Pascal? This is how much. It's equal to 1/10 of an insect passing gas. That's pretty minute, ain't it, Jim? Can you think of a better explanation than that?
I think that's just I have a very vivid picture of that. I think that picture's worth a lot of words. So.
That'll probably keep you up tonight in your sleep. Okay, so Jim, he was using one of these with these hoses. Now, this is called a manometer. You can't see the green one because I got a green screen, but I got 2 hoses. So what this monitor is doing, this is what you're reading the pressures with. Am I correct?
Exactly. So what that thing is measuring, the 2 hoses, is that you have one that's going to the fan, and then you have one that's going outside, because you're comparing the pressure to the inside of the house to the outside of the house. Because if the pressure outside changes, the pressure on the inside of the house is going to change. And so what it does, we get the fan going to 50 pascals, it measures the amount of air that is being passed through there. And so it goes back when I was talking about the 8 air changes per hour. You want to find out how many times all the air in the house is leaved and then brought back in. And so the acceptable amount with the current IRC guidelines in energy efficient homes, the maximum amount allowable is 3 air changes per hour. So if you have all the air that's leaving the house and coming back in 3 times or less, then that is an acceptable amount of air loss. I don't know if in the very end of that, he talked about had an air change per hour of 6.2. So that house was almost twice of the allowable amount for the current energy homes per the IRC guidelines. And the IRC is simply just International Residence Code that sets forth all the mandates and all the testing requirements for these homes.
Okay, so as I'm looking at my manometer, I'm holding it up in front of the screen, and Jim, you're seeing it says input and it says reference. Input and reference. What does that mean?
Okay, as I mentioned, you have the 2 hoses, and the reference is the one that's going outside. And then the input is the one that's being hooked up to the fan. So the reference is measuring the pressure on the outside of the home, and the input is measuring the pressure or the amount of airflow that's going through the fan.
Gotcha. Now I'm also seeing it reading different amounts of time. As you look, I can turn that dial. I can go from A to B and read 2 different areas on my manometer. And I've also got that I can take a 1-second average, a 5-second average, a 10-second average, and long-term average. So where do you usually test that?
Mine's not quite that sophisticated. It only has 1 time, and it's just a constant amount. And so I don't have any way to change the times on that. But I think it's for 60 seconds is what mine defaults to.
Yeah, this manometer, so you'll know, is probably about 15 years old, and actually, it's a really good one. I had to send it back about a year ago, have it recalibrated. So yes, this is a pretty good manometer that I've got here that I've used for a lot of years. Now, as you look, my wife Cheryl just added in. We were very enlightened when we had our house done. because I don't do blower door testing. I'm very familiar with it, but I actually hired a company to come do the blower door testing. And we were amazed, and me knowing this stuff, Jim, it blew me that my own house, when I saw the leakage we had where boards met at the ceiling through molding, all these other things, it just blew my mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was talking about earlier, that's probably where the ceiling and the walls meet is probably it is the number one air loss in a home. But it's just amazing how many places, because we do also a smoke pencil, and you can just walk around and just watch that smoke go everywhere.
Okay. So this is another tool that he used. This is a FLIR, FLIR infrared camera, thermal imaging camera. And what you're using this for, Jim, do you use a thermal imaging camera when you're doing your testing?
Yes.
Okay.
Once you have the fan going and then get it down to the amount of pressure that you want, you can go with that and see changes in pressure. I mean, in temperature. For example, I talked about can lights are notorious. So even if you have the light off, then you can show it up there on the ceiling and then get an air temperature reading and then move it over to a can light and watch it change drastically from the air coming in. And like he mentioned, if it's a summer day, it's going to be a big increase of hot air. Winter day, big increase of cold air that's being come through that.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Jim. When you do a blower door test on people's homes and they see these air leakages and where this is costing them their utility bills, I know in our case, we estimated that our utility bill to heat our house dropped between 20 and 25% whenever we did the blower door testing, because that's how many leaks we had found. We found them in windows, we found them in the ceiling, in the molding, electrical outlets, switches, you name it. It was pretty unreal, and it was really drastic. So what do your customers say when you find these issues?
Basically, they're kind of like, yeah, well, I get a little bit of air here, a little bit of air there. But when you bring it into a conceptual, you can take all those places, and it's like having a 3x3 window and just open the window to the outside. And then when they see that visual, they're like going, we're losing a lot of air. So
Now,
imagine having a window 3x3. And so in the wintertime, you have that much cold air coming in. And then in the summertime, that much air going out.
so when you say 3x3, are you talking inches or feet?
I'm talking feet, 3 feet by 3 feet.
You're talking about that when you can find a home that the leak is so bad, it's equal to having a 3 foot by 3 foot window wide open.
Exactly.
How
And
shocking was that when you went through training and learned this, Jim?
Oh, I couldn't believe it. I had no idea. I always heard about, energy, a little caulk here, a little caulk there, a little weather stripping. I had no idea how much air was leaving. Because when I got certified, the first house I did was mine, and I'm too embarrassed to say what mine. I think mine was like 7.6 air changes.
Wait a minute. Whoa, stop. I've been to your home. Your house had an exchange rate of 7.6.
7.6.
Where did you find the problems? Because you've got a modern brick home, and I would classify it as well built. Where were the problem areas in your own home?
Everywhere, from the doors. And another big one was from the air ducts, because a lot of people don't realize that, because you never see them, but a lot of people have around here, they have the air ducts up in the attic. And if you have air in the attic or holes, then all that air conditioning in the summertime is going up in the attic. But conversely, in the wintertime, you have hot air going up in the attic also. So if you ever go up in the attic in the summertime and it's nice and cool, you've got a problem. You've got air leakage somewhere. I know that we would be taking Christmas decorations up in the attic and store them, and it'd be nice and toasty up there, and it shouldn't be.
Okay. So when you look at all these different factors that are coming in, does it really, and then you got to take the mechanical things into account, which is the clothes dryers, the central house vacuums, the bathroom exhaust, the whole house vacuums, all these different things can come into play. So what you got to remember is this is often what's happening. Your attic could be leaking air into the attic. Upper levels are usually where we see the leakage going on, where you're losing heated air out of your home on the upper levels. And what we have a lot of times, if we have air being pulled into the home on the lower levels, but you need somebody with expertise, because many times we have appliances such as a furnace, a boiler, a water heater, other things, fireplaces, kitchen ranges, all these require air. So what you got to do is get an expert in, somebody like Jim. So Jim, if they're not in West Texas, what would you tell somebody to look for to find a qualified technician to run a blower door test on their home?
I would just Google blower door testing. 'Cause if they're going to show up for blower door testing, that means they've been certified and they've gone through the education, the testing to do the blower door test for them. Also, you can there's a lot of energy efficient companies out there that are specialized in insulation and also in energy efficiency as far as taking care of weather stripping and caulking and things of that nature. So that Google, as you know, you can find a wealth of anything in there.
Check
And
their
also,
check their reviews, check other things like that, right? That's how you
yep,
would do it. Okay, so
absolutely.
but let's bring it home, Jim. Let's say we got somebody in Amarillo, Texas, and they need Jim Ray to come out. How do they get in touch with Jim Ray out in Amarillo, Texas?
The best way to do it is to Google West Texas Chimney, or you can call our number at 358-0817. We'd be more than happy to visit with you. And if necessary, we can schedule an appointment to come out and take a look at your home.
There you go. Well, Jim, I really want to thank you for being on our show today. I think you've shared a lot of expertise here, and I think you're helping a lot of people that will listen to this around the country. Again, we're speaking to consumers here. So this is the Fireplace Show. It is sponsored by CVC Success Group. We present this show every Tuesday as our goal, 4 p.m. Eastern Time in the afternoon. Please, if you see the value here, consider sharing this on your own social media. We're trying to get the word out. We're trying to help a lot of people with their fireplace issues. We talk about all kinds of things, fireplace, chimney related. So, Jim, we'll see you later. And I appreciate you being here with me today. You did really great, my friend. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Jerry.
Okay.